Beneath the walls of a majestic castle, Duke Villian stands with his army, the master of the northern borders, facing a massive army of the undead, whose numbers have exceeded all expectations, and a terrifying poisonous fog spreads through the air. A man shouts, calling out to the Duke and pointing at something. From among the army of the dead, the undead knight Dorian appears, a knight so powerful that even 10 high-ranking knights cannot guarantee victory against him if they fought to the death. One of the men suggests to the Duke that they retreat and prepare for a siege, insisting that victory is impossible with their current forces. The Duke rejects the idea of retreating, explaining that the northern wall has already fallen, and if the city gate falls as well, the nation will be finished. As the Duke emphasizes the need to hold them back today, no matter the sacrifices, he suddenly stops speaking, astonished. Suddenly, an unknown person rushes at incredible speed towards the enemy army, and the Duke wonders about his identity. It is revealed that this person is Lord Villian of the southern Marquisate of Rocks. Someone recognizes him as the one who fights with daggers. Doubt spreads among the men about his ability to face Dorian with daggers, believing it is impossible to kill him. Villian attacks the knight, Dorian, and Dorian's body begins to melt, amidst the astonishment of everyone wondering how this is happening. Then, Villian lands other blows on the rest of the undead, and their bodies also melt with a single strike. The men marvel at this scene where the terrifying corpses melt with a single blow. One of them wonders if Villian is a saint sent from heaven, to which another sarcastically replies not to make him laugh. In reality, Villian was not a saint. He was using the battle to his advantage. System messages appear before him, stating that he has gained experience and increased the level of the Firebone Mountain technique, a poison that can dissolve the marrow of the undead, and that the 10,000 poisons absorption technique has absorbed the poison, increasing the experience of the 4 heavenly poison arts. Villian declares to himself that he will take everything that is useful for his body. The events go back 6 months in time, where Villian wakes up in a luxurious room, wondering where he is. A woman addresses him, saying, "Have you awakened, young master?" Villian looks at her in astonishment, admiring her beauty, but he notices her strange clothes and the sword at her waist. The woman asks about his condition, and as he tries to answer, she tells him she will call the priest immediately and leaves. He tries to stop her to ask something, but she has already left. After the woman left, the young man remained alone, wondering where he was. But when he looked at his body in the mirror, he was greatly shocked. He screamed in surprise at his new appearance, wondering where his original body, that of a mature and attractive man, had gone, and how he had transformed into this chubby, childish form. He couldn't comprehend it, and thought he might be in a dream, thinking that if he went back to sleep, he might wake up from this nightmare. At that moment, a man entered and addressed him as young master, and it appeared he was the priest. Another person followed the man, an elderly man with an imposing and intimidating presence. In addition to the priest, he grabbed the young man's hand. The imposing man angrily scolded the young man, calling him a disgrace to the family's honor and asking if he had finally decided to wake up. The young man wondered to himself about the identity of this frightening man, while the priest tried to calm his master, suggesting they postpone the punishment since the young master had just woken up. The imposing man reluctantly stopped scolding the young man after being convinced by the priest's words. After the priest examined the young man, he told the imposing man that his mind seemed stable and most of his injuries had healed, expressing his relief. But the imposing man scoffed at the word relief and shouted that he would have preferred it if the young man had died, then accused him of assaulting his fiancée and called him a monster. He continued to berate him, reminding him that he had turned 19 and it was time to grow up. He pointed out that his younger brother had already awakened his aura, while he, the eldest son, was getting fatter by the day. The young man stood bewildered by the term aura, which he did not understand. The imposing man ordered him to go directly to his fiancée and apologize properly as soon as he recovered. When the young man asked who she was, the man shouted that she was his fiancée, Alia, warning him that he would be finished if she didn't forgive him. Under the threat, the young man answered with a trembling voice in agreement. The man concluded his words with a final warning to Villian not to bring any more shame to the Rocks family. Upon hearing the name Villian, the young man realized the horrifying truth. He was Villian, and if he was Villian, then this frightening man was Marquis Wellington Rocks. Unconsciously, he spoke the name Wellington directly. The Marquis became enraged that his son dared to call him by his first name to his face and struck him forcefully. Villian's body flew through the air and fell to the ground while those present tried to calm the furious Marquis. As Villian lay on the floor, almost unconscious, he still believed that everything happening couldn't be real, but just a dream. Then suddenly he gasped and woke up. Villian wakes up again, still in shock, wondering why he can't wake up from this annoying dream. A white-haired woman enters and asks if he has awakened. He looks at her in shock and calls her by the name Arin, and she responds, confirming her identity. His confusion grows as he puts his hands on his head in despair. Urian asks Aaron if the reason he's in bed is that he pursued Elia and was beaten by her until he lost consciousness. Aaron is surprised by his sudden formal tone of speech, but she confirms to him that he was indeed attacked by Lady Elia, and that she hit him so hard he fainted after he tried to assault her. Urian realizes the extent of his trouble, and feels that he's finished. The whole truth suddenly becomes clear to him. He has somehow ended up inside the web novel that he himself wrote. The bigger disaster is that he didn't reincarnate as the protagonist, but became the despicable villain who creates problems for the hero and ultimately dies a miserable death. He panics, refusing to believe what's happening, and screams that this isn't just a webtoon, which confuses Aaron, who asks him the meaning of that word. Urian cries as he remembers the details of the character Urian Rocks that he has now become. He recalls that in his novel, Urian was a scumbag by all measures, with no talent or skills and never trained, living only off his family's name as an heir. In the end, he loses his fiancée to the protagonist, and in a fit of rage, he attacks the hero, only to suffer a crushing defeat, and die pathetically in a back alley. Amidst this uncertain world, he wonders how he is supposed to survive, especially since he doesn't know what abilities Urian possesses in this fictional world. But he suddenly remembers that as the story's author, he at least knows the opportunities and items the protagonist hasn't found yet. He decides he needs to prepare quickly. When he tries to get up, he stumbles and feels the weight of his fat-filled body. Aaron asks him with concern if he is okay, but he doesn't seem interested, and she advises him to continue resting. Then he suddenly stops, staring into space, realizing he can't see that thing now. As Urian wonders why he can't see that thing, he realizes it might be related to his earlier frowning. Suddenly, a transparent system window appears before him, revealing information about Aaron. Urian discovers with astonishment that it's the famous status window from such worlds. The window displays Aaron's name, her traits which include Swift Sword Level 2, Clear Mind Level 1, and Aura Adaptation Level 1, in addition to an affection meter that reads 0. Aaron notices him staring into space and asks about his condition. Urian gets flustered and tells her he went crazy for a moment but is fine now, then asks her to return to her duties. Aaron agrees and leaves. Once he's alone, Urian summons Aaron's status window again to examine it. He remembers that in his original story, Aaron was always stronger and more talented than ordinary knights, which the Swift Sword trait confirms. But he pauses at the affection meter, wondering what it is, and if this world is like the dating simulation games he used to play. However, he notes with relief that the affection level isn't negative, which is a good thing considering Urian's usual behavior. Urian decides this isn't the main point, and tries to summon his own status window. Indeed, it appears before him, revealing his name, Urian Rocks, his special condition, morbid obesity, and a unique trait, Creator's Eye Level 1, in addition to 4 heavenly poison arts, locked, and a synchronization rate of 99.9%. The 4 heavenly poison arts especially catches his attention, but he notices that the trait is there, yet it remains locked. He remembers it was taken from a wuxia webtoon he loved, which featured an attractive heroine. Those martial arts relied on poisons and hidden weapons. Urian realizes his world is a strange mix of ideas, but he sees this art as a golden opportunity and believes it might be his ticket to survival. The text describes this ability as belonging to a clan from Chinese wuxia novels, a prestigious sect from Sichuan province specializing in poisons and silent assassinations with poisoned hidden weapons. The name of this trait appears in his status window as Tang Clan of Sichuan, locked, making Urian wonder why it exists in a medieval fantasy world, and what would happen if he could unlock this ability. Elsewhere, Aaron calls out to the Marquis, who asks Aaron if Urian has woken up. Aaron answers in the affirmative, confirming he woke up a short while ago. When he asks about his condition, she tells him he doesn't seem normal yet, and that he stumbled when he tried to stand, indicating his body is still in bad shape. The Marquis is surprised by this, especially since Priest Elio told him Urian's wounds were not deep. As the Marquis leaves, he asks Aaron if she noticed anything strange in Urian's behavior. He points out that normally, Urian would have flown into a rage if asked to apologize to Elia, but this time he agreed quietly and strangely. The Marquis believes his son's personality hasn't changed, and his current calmness is just a temporary daze, expecting him to return to his angry nature by tomorrow, vowing revenge on Elia. In contrast, Aaron expresses her hope that the young master will recover and gradually improve. The Marquis scoffs at her faith in him, admitting that he himself, his father, has already given up on him. He laughs bitterly, saying he feels sorry for her, and that it would have been better if he had let her live her life as a knight. Aaron remains silent, thinking about how difficult things are for her master. But she remembers that the young master today seemed different in a way that was hard to explain. Meanwhile, Urian asks Aaron to guide him to the training hall. because he wants to do some exercises. Aaron is surprised by his sudden request to train at this particular time, but Urian insists. As they walk, Urian thinks about his new ability. The Creator's Eye trait allows him to see stats, but he has no idea how to unlock the locked Tang Clan of Sichuan ability. He guesses that his obesity might be the reason and decides to start by exercising as a first step. Urian feels exhausted just walking through the vast palace garden, which is the size of several playing fields. He realizes he is not fit for home workouts, as his obesity always pulls him back to bed. He also notices that whenever he passes a servant, their affinity meter shows extremely negative values, ranging from hatred to intense disgust. It seems everyone around him hates him. He doesn't blame them, admitting to himself how bad the original Urian's personality was. After a tiring walk, they finally arrive at the third training hall, which is less used by the knights. They notice someone else is there. As soon as Urian's eyes fall on him, a status window appears with a shocking message. Affinity, -91. Desire to kill. The window reveals this person is Rika Olian, possessing the Swift Sword Level 1 trait. Rika smiles sarcastically and asks Urian why he has come to the training hall. While Urian recognizes him in shock, as Rika smiles, he comments that it's a great honor that the young master still remembers him. Urian nervously replies that of course he remembers him. Urian quickly turns to Aaron and whispers, asking her if something happened between him and this man. Aaron asks in surprise if he doesn't remember, then reminds him of the incident. Aaron explains that a few years ago, when the Marquis forced him to train, the enraged Urian summoned Rika, who was then a trainee knight, and disfigured his face with a sword while laughing. After that incident, the Marquis gave up on forcing him to train. Urian is shocked, and realizes to himself that the original Urian was truly a hopeless scumbag. Urian decides it's better to go back, and asks Aaron if there's another training hall he can use alone. Aaron tells him there is a fourth hall, but it's far away with poor facilities, mostly just an empty field. Urian sees this place as perfect and asks her to take him there, declaring that if he's going to lose weight, he'll do it properly. Aaron agrees and leads him to the fourth hall. As soon as they arrive, Urian thinks about how the Tang Clan of Sichuan specializes in throwing knives and small weapons. In an attempt to unlock the ability, he grabs a dagger and throws it forcefully, but nothing happens. He feels disappointed because he thought he would be able to unlock the ability. He laughs nervously, claiming he was just throwing for fun, and decides he must build his stamina first. Aaron suggests he run around the hall, but Urian tells her he will train alone and she can train as she wishes. Then he starts running. The Marquis stands astonished, wondering how Urian actually came to the training ground and started exercising. He finds it strange and wonders how long this enthusiasm will last. 3 weeks later, it turns out that Urian hasn't missed a single day of training during this entire period. He has lost a lot of weight, and his appearance has changed noticeably. The Marquis comments on this change, saying, "As expected of my son." As the Marquis watches his son, he notices that without the fat, his son actually looks handsome, and he wonders if he has truly matured. In his room, Urian looks at his body in the mirror, realizing he has lost a lot of weight. But he is still worried because the Tang Clan of Sichuan trait has not been unlocked yet. He decides to give it another month, and if nothing happens, he will have to steal the fateful encounter meant for the protagonist in the story. At that moment, Aaron enters with his dinner. A system window appears, explaining that the dish is Sharon soup, a nutritious dish that helps burn fat and build muscle, and it is customary in the Rox family to eat it after every training session. Urian shows his displeasure at eating the same soup again, so Aaron asks if he is tired of it. Urian confirms that he is indeed tired of eating it for 3 consecutive weeks. Aaron asks him seriously about his true goal, whether he just wants to lose weight or to become a knight. Urian enthusiastically declares that he, of course, wants to become a knight. Aaron then scolds him, reminding him that even the great Marquis himself eats Charon soup after his training, and therefore, as a young master, he should stop complaining and eat it. Urian gives in, and starts eating, thinking to himself that this tradition is old-fashioned, but he will endure it because it helps him lose weight. While eating the soup, he notices that its taste is slightly different today. Suddenly, a system message appears, telling him he has ingested poison. Despite his shock, another message follows, stating that he has met the condition to unlock the Tang Clan of Sichuan, and that the trait is now unlocked, leaving him in a state of bewilderment. Elsewhere in the palace, the Marquis was still thinking about his son's change. He admitted that his son had become handsome after losing weight, and wondered again if he had really matured. Someone asks the Marquis for permission to enter the room, carrying some tea for him, and she is revealed to be his second wife, Kana. She asks him what he was looking at so intently. The Marquis replies that he was just thinking about the beauty of the garden. Kana praises his taste and tells him that she has been personally taking great care of the garden, and the Marquis compliments her on her wonderful skills. As the Marquis and his wife Kana converse, Kana asks him when he will choose Colin as his heir, as he had previously mentioned. She adds that since the matter has already been decided, it would be better to speed it up, The Marquis is surprised by her question and tells her hesitantly that it might take more time. Kana objects and reminds him that he promised to name Colin as the heir within this month. The Marquis explains that, as she has probably heard, Urian seems to have come to his senses recently, and as the eldest son of the Rocks family, if he perseveres like this, he could become a good successor. Kana pretends to agree, saying she has also heard about Urian's improvement and that she was worried about him but is happy he has finally regained his senses, considering it must be a relief for the Marquis as well. The Marquis laughs, commenting sarcastically that his son only woke up after his fiancée slapped him. When Kana asks him again what he will do about the heir, the Marquis replies that Urian has only been training for 3 weeks and he would prefer to observe him for a longer period, but he promises her that if Urian returns to his old ways, he will immediately grant the title of heir to their first son, Colin. Kana asks him to join her in the bedroom after he finishes his work, and after she leaves, signs of intense anger appear on her face as she silently vows revenge on Urian. Meanwhile, Urian was still shocked by the unlocking of the Tang clan of Sichuan trait. As the Sichuan Tang family specializes in poisons, he realizes the condition for unlocking it was to ingest poison, which he finds ridiculous. He recalls the information window for the Sharon soup and discovers he can scroll down to see more details. The additional information reveals a database update regarding the Hanyang herb with a paralysis property. This herb is primarily a medicinal plant but contains a very mild poison. It is harmless to adults in small amounts, but if it accumulates in the body, it slowly paralyzes the body until death. Aaron snaps him out of his daze by asking why he stopped eating. Urian comes to his senses and starts eating quickly. As he eats, he thinks about who put the poison in his food. He remembers that in the original story, the second son, Colin, was supposed to be named heir around this time. He deduces that the reason for the delay is because he started training, and therefore the one who poisoned him is likely from that side. Another system window appears, informing him that he has met the condition to unlock weak paralysis poison. After he finishes his entire meal, he tells Aaron with a strange smile that the soup was so delicious it made him cry. He then asks her to leave him alone for a while. Aaron agrees, wishes him a good night, and leaves. As soon as he is alone, Urian summons his status window to examine the newly unlocked Tang clan of Sichuan trait. His updated status window appears, indicating his condition as overweight, mild poisoning, and mild muscle pain. In addition to his traits and synchronization rate, he discovers he can focus on a specific part of the interface, just like in virtual reality games, to display additional details. When he focuses on the Tang clan of Sichuan trait, it branches into 3 categories: poisons, hidden weapons, and martial arts, all of which are locked. He decides to start by examining the poisons category first. A long list of available poisons appears, such as weak paralysis poison, truth serum, and soul-killing smoke, all locked and requiring lower-level poisons to be unlocked first. When he scrolls to the end of the list, he finds the final available poison is the level 30 Absolute Hidden. He realizes the system is based on gradually unlocking skills by level. To unlock the simplest poison, weak paralysis poison, he discovers he needs an internal technique first. He finds this logical, as the Tang clan uses internal energy to control poisons. He then moves on to examine the martial arts category in search of an internal technique. A list of basic internal techniques available for selection appears, including Dark Poison Arts, Thunder Needle Arts, and 10,000 Divine Poisons Energy, with a warning that he can only choose one internal technique. As a fan of Wuxia stories, he finds the choice easy. He remembers that Dark Poison Arts focuses on poisons, Thunder Needle Arts focuses on hidden weapons, while 10,000 Divine Poisons Energy, although it takes longer to master, allows for achieving mastery in both poisons and hidden weapons. He chooses the last option, believing that more is better, as is always the case with Wuxia story protagonists. As soon as he chooses 10,000 Divine Poisons Energy, he feels the technique's incantations have been engraved in his mind. He immediately decides to try circulating the energy, so he takes off his shirt and sits in a meditative posture. He feels a strange flow throughout his body and realizes this is qi, or vital energy. He begins to guide it through the correct energy pathways in his body and then stores it in his Dantian energy center to build his internal power. He spends the entire night training until morning, and discovers with astonishment that martial arts novels weren't lying about being able to train all night without sleep. He finds it to be completely true, and what's more, he doesn't feel tired at all. On the contrary, he feels his whole body is filled with energy. He also discovers that he can now sense the flow of qi around him, to the point where he can tell how many birds are outside his window without even looking. He feels the warm, solid energy in his Dantian, and discovers he can now open the status window just by directing qi to his head without needing a mirror. And the window shows that his 10,000 Divine Poisons Energy is at level 1 star at 10%. After spending the night in meditation, Urian senses a familiar aura outside his door. Aaron enters at that moment to wake him, and notices that his bed hasn't been touched, concluding he didn't sleep all night. Urian confirmed to her that he hasn't slept yet. She suggests he rest and skip today's training, but Urian enthusiastically refuses, insisting that he feels excellent and must train. Aaron reluctantly agrees and decides to prepare breakfast for him first. After closing the door behind her, she wonders to herself when the young master started gaining muscle. Later in the training ground, Urian grabs one of the daggers. He is suddenly surprised by the appearance of a crosshair in front of his eyes, similar to those in first-person shooter video games. He decides to aim precisely at the target and throws the dagger with force. The dagger hits the target accurately. Aaron was surprised when she saw him hit the target on the first try. A system window appears, announcing the unlocking of the hidden weapons category of the Tang clan of Sichuan. A shocked Aaron asks him what he just did. Urian replies that he doesn't know either, claiming that the results of his training over the past month are starting to show. Urian looks at the stunned Aaron, noticing it's the first time he's seen her this flustered. He decides to try again, thinking that when he throws, he feels a fiery internal energy rushing from the bottom of his stomach. He throws the dagger again, this time with greater force and speed. The dagger penetrates the target and shatters it completely. Aaron was extremely shocked when she saw that he not only hit the target accurately but completely destroyed it. Urian realizes that having this crosshair is basically a cheat. He remembers that in his previous life, he was skilled at shooting games, so much so that he once won a local tournament at an internet cafe in a game called Battle Attack. As Aaron stands stunned, wondering what is happening, Urian asks her if she feels anything emanating from him. Aaron replies that she can't say anything special, except for the fact that he has lost a lot of weight since yesterday. She confirms that while he had been steadily losing weight due to his daily training and eating Sharon soup, the change in him today was particularly noticeable. Urian is surprised by her answer and realizes that she cannot sense the flow of internal energy in his body. He concludes from this that in this world, he is the only one who can use internal energy, and no one else can detect it, which means he has gained an amazing and unique power. Urian decides to continue training, and throws more daggers with extreme precision. This time, he threw a dagger that pierced the dagger already stuck in the target, which impresses Aaron, who covers her mouth in shock. She asks to try throwing once herself. Aaron throws the dagger, but it misses the target completely. Urian laughs, pointing out that he's finally found something she can't do, which annoys her. At that moment, a system window appears before Urian, announcing the completion of the Memory of Sachundanga and the unlocking of the Straight Strike skill. The window explains that this skill enables him to throw with greater force and speed, not just with the weapons he remembers, but with anything else like stones, wood, or iron swords, as if it were his treasured weapon. While Aaron was still trying to understand why she failed, Urian picks up a broken wooden sword to test his new skill. He asks her to step back a little. Aaron was surprised when she saw him holding a broken sword, not realizing what he intended to do with it. Then Urian feels a huge flow of internal energy from his dantian to his arms, and throws the wooden sword. The broken sword flies with immense force and pierces the center of the target, shattering it. Aaron is stunned and screams, asking about this power and what is happening. Urian replies with feigned modesty that he's not sure, and maybe it's the power of practice. Aaron rejects this explanation, realizing that what she saw was impossible. At that point, Urian addresses her seriously, saying he knows she reports on his affairs to his father, the Marquis. This admission surprises her, so he asks her for a favor, which is to keep this matter a secret for the time being. He explains that he is currently testing several things, and that he will explain everything to her himself later, asking her to wait until then. Aaron agrees to his request. After the training day ends, Urian watches one of the chefs, named Pero, as he leaves. Urian uses the Creator's Eye ability to examine him, and a status window appears, revealing that Pero has the traits Poisonous Touch Level 1 and Agile Movement Level 1, and his affinity level with him is neutral. Urian realizes that the Poisonous Touch trait is what allows Pero to put poison in food and confirms that he is the one who poisoned him. Urian decides it's time for his real test. He focuses his energy, and releases the paralysis poison he recently learned. On Pero from a distance, Pero is immediately poisoned, and falls to the ground, unable to move. Urian celebrates his success and notices a timer appearing above Pero, indicating the paralysis effect will last for an hour. Urian carries the paralyzed Pero and moves him to a secluded alley. As Pero gradually begins to regain consciousness, Urian starts to question him. He asks him if he knows who he is, threatens him, and tells him that if he wants to live, he must answer truthfully. He asks him directly if he was the one who put the poison in his soup, since Pero cannot speak. Urian sets up a simple system for answering. Blink once for yes, and twice for no. After Pero confirms his understanding with a single blink, Urian repeats his question about whether he was the one who poisoned the soup, and Pero blinks once, admitting his guilt. Urian continues his interrogation, asking if the poison used was Hanyang herb, and Pero confirms this with another blink. Then Urian asks him the most important question about who ordered him to poison him, and was it Marchioness Kaina who ordered him to do it? Urian is surprised when Pero blinks twice, denying Kaina's involvement. Urian doubts his answer and warns him not to lie, threatening to slit his throat and claiming he can tell if he is lying or not. As Urian pressures and threatens Pero, he repeats his question about whether Lady Kaina was the one who ordered him to poison him. Pero remains silent for a moment, then blinks twice again, denying Kaina's involvement. Urian is surprised by his insistence, but he sees in his eyes that he is not lying, so he wonders about the identity of the real person who gave the order. Urian decides to postpone finding out this information for later. After that, Urian takes something out and forces Pero to eat it. He tells him that what he ate is paralysis poison, and that he only has 1 month to live. He warns him that if he doesn't take the antidote in his possession within this month, all his internal organs will dissolve. With that, he forces him to follow his orders from now on, and asks if he understood the meaning of his words, to which Pero agrees with a fearful blink of an eye. Urian places his hand on Pero's head and cancels the effect of the paralysis poison on him, and Pero is surprised to regain his ability to move. As soon as Pero regains his ability to speak, Urian asks him for the last time who ordered him to poison him. Pero confesses that the one who gave the order was the Knight Commander, Carox Levington. Urian recognizes the name, and Pero explains that Carox ordered him to kill the young master due to illness within this year. Urian remembers that Carox is Kaina's older brother, who got the position of Knight Commander thanks to her marriage to the Marquis, and he realizes his conclusion wasn't entirely wrong and that Carox is her partner. Urian decides this isn't the important part now and gives Pero a piece of paper. Pero realizes the paper contains a list of poisons. Urian tells him that since Pero has extensive knowledge of poisons, it means he can obtain them from the black market, using the money he will get from Carox. He orders him to collect all the poisons on the list and bring them to him, and to start with what he already has by tomorrow night. When Pero asks why he needs these poisons, Urian scolds him and tells him he didn't give him permission to ask questions. Pero backs down in fear and agrees to carry out the order. Before Pero leaves, Urian adds one last shocking order. From now on, his soup must always be full of Hanyang herb. This order leaves Pero in a state of complete bewilderment, while Urian laughs, impressed by how amazing martial arts are. As Pero leaves, Urian thinks sarcastically about how Pero believed the paralysis poison lie, revealing that what he forced him to eat was nothing but dried leaves. Urian decides that he needs to quickly master the martial arts of the Tang clan of Sichuan. He remembers that if events were to proceed according to the settings he wrote in his story, a terrifying event would soon occur in the outside world. That night, Pero brings him the poisonous herbs he already had in his possession. Urian examines the herbs and recognizes them immediately, thanks to the status window that appears before him, and Pero is surprised by his ability to identify these rare poisons. Urian boasted to him that this information was a simple matter for him, although in reality, he got it from the window that appears to him. Urian asks him why he was carrying other poisons if the Hanyang herb alone was enough to kill him. Pero explains that the effect of the Hanyang herb is slow and resistance can be developed against it, but by mixing it with Yakrokba poison, its effect becomes stronger and more stealthy. Urian deduces that mixing poisons makes them stronger and more precise. Urian asks Pero how he learned all this, and Pero replies that when he was 8 years old, he was sold to the Levington family and trained under a poison master there. He adds that there were about 20 other children, but they all died, and only he survived. Urian realizes that Pero holds a great grudge against the Levington family and that he has found himself a useful tool. Urian praised Pero for doing a good job, then allowed him to leave. After dismissing Pero, Urian decides to begin his training. He takes all the poisonous herbs and starts eating them. A system window with consecutive messages appears, informing him that he has ingested various poisons and that the body of 10,000 divine poisons is absorbing them. Suddenly, a danger warning appears, requiring him to perform immediate breathing meditation. Urian sits and meditates deeply, determined to reach the second stage of his technique. The next morning, Erin enters to wake Urian. She is surprised to see him sitting shirtless in meditation. She is shocked to see his body, which has transformed overnight into a muscular physique. A system window appears before Urian, telling him that the 10,000 divine poisons energy has advanced to the second stage, that he has acquired a new martial art, the Little Dragon Step, and that several new poison techniques have been unlocked. As Erin asks him in confusion what is happening, she smells a foul odor coming from his body. Urian realizes that what the novels say is true. When internal energy rises and martial arts advance, the body expels a large amount of waste at once. Urian realized the smell was truly repulsive, so he moved to open the window. Erin begs him not to do anything, and orders Urian to go to the bathroom, and he tells her to go immediately. After cleaning himself, he leaves with Erin and they head to the training ground. On the way, Urian begins to learn his new skill, the the Little Dragon Step, a special footwork of the Tang clan, perfect for swift movement, assassination, and evasion. Urian feels overjoyed to learn a skill that usually only appears in wuxia novels, and finds that simply imitating the movements gives him a good feeling. She asks him worriedly if he is okay. Aaron notices his strange walk, which resembles that of a drunkard. Urian laughs and assures her that he is fine, but she remains concerned, and asks if he is sure about going to the first training hall today, pointing out that it will be crowded with knights. Urian assures her he is fine and explains that he just wants to see how the other knights train. When they arrive, the trainee knights notice their presence. One of them recognizes Aaron as the young master's maid, but they don't recognize Urian at first, instead wondering about the identity of this handsome young man. Then one of them remembers the rumors that the young master had lost a lot of weight, and they realize that this young man is Urian himself. Whispers circulate among them, expressing their disbelief at this transformation, as he was as fat as a pig just a month ago, and they wonder what kind of magic he used. Thanks to his internal energy, Urian can hear all their whispers clearly. He notices a trainee knight training seriously and proficiently, and comments that he will soon become a junior knight. Aaron tells him that these are the basic sword stances of the Rox family and advises him to watch closely. At that moment, Urian realizes that this knight is none other than Kryde, one of the main characters in his novel, and a future ally of the protagonist. Urian hadn't written anything about Kryde's appearance before he met the protagonist and finds it interesting that he was here all along. He sees his presence as an opportunity that could be useful to him later. Urian turns back to the knights who were whispering about him, and uses Creator's Eye to see that their affinity levels range from hostile to disgusted and murderous intent. Urian decides that these knights will be his first testing ground. As Urian watches the knights, he decides to start by testing the lingering poison, a poison that spreads throughout all organs once inhaled. Urian chose one of the knights to be the first to test the skill on. He activates the lingering poison. Suddenly, one of the knights falls to his knees in pain, and his colleagues gather around him in concern, leading others to suggest calling a priest. The knight screams from the intense pain, but suddenly the knight stands up, as the pain has completely disappeared, which angers his colleagues who accuse him of wasting their time. After the success of his first experiment, Urian decides to test another poison. This time he chooses soul-killing smoke, a poison that creates illusions causing fear and confusion within a specific range. He activates it while the knights are still arguing. One of the knights was surprised when he saw a monster suddenly appear and pounce on him. The knights begin to scream in terror. Aaron was surprised by the knights' reaction and didn't understand why they were screaming. The knights collapse to the ground in a state of panic, while Aaron stands bewildered, wondering why they are acting so strangely. Each of them sees monsters, demons, and skeletons. The knights were plunged into a state of absolute terror, unable to think or act. After the knights calm down and come to their senses, they look at each other in confusion, wondering what just happened. Urian realizes that continuing the test could lead to real bloodshed, and feels satisfied with the power of his poisons. Urian told Aaron that they should go back. He tells Aaron that the place has become too noisy and he'd rather go to the 4th training hall. On their way back, a maid calls out to them and tells him he has a visitor. The maid informs him that Lady Elia Marquis has come to see him. Meanwhile, Elia is waiting for him inside, determined to break off their engagement for good this time. When Urian enters the room, Elia sees him and is utterly shocked by his new appearance, while he greets her calmly. But Elia had not yet recognized him. When the maid informs him of Lady Elia's arrival, Urian thinks of his fiancée, Elia Marquis, who is skilled with her fists. He remembers that around this time in the original story, Elia began to demand the annulment of their engagement, but the original Urian kept refusing. Urian sighs, as he had no choice but to face her. When he meets her, Elia is so shocked by his new appearance that she doesn't recognize him and asks who he is. Urian calmly tells her that it's him, which confuses her even more. She tells him she heard a rumor that he lost weight from training but thought it was false. She wonders how he could change so much in less than 2 months. Urian simply replies that he worked hard, and Elia is surprised by his answer. He explains that after being beaten by her, he thought a lot, and decided to change. Elia doubts his intentions, thinking he might be trying to pick a fight as a form of revenge, which Urian vehemently denies. Then, surprisingly, he kneels before her, expressing his gratitude. He tells her that thanks to her, he was able to come to his senses, and he sincerely apologizes for what happened back then. He adds that if she wishes to break off the engagement because of that incident, he will accept her decision. Elia, completely bewildered, asks him who he really is, to which he replies, Urian Rox, the former scoundrel. Urian apologized to her profusely, and Elia was stunned by his change. Urian thinks to himself that although what happened wasn't his fault, but the fault of the original body's owner, There is one reason that makes him ask for forgiveness in this manner. Urian uses Creator's Eye and sees Aaliyah's status window, which reveals her traits kingdom-toppling beauty and sword queen, and her preference level for him is -16, hatred. Urian realizes that Aaliyah is not just an ordinary heroine. The sword queen trait makes her continuously grow stronger, and later in the story, she saves the fallen protagonist and defeats one of the main villains thanks to this trait. Therefore, he figures that even if they break off the engagement, it's better to mend their relationship and make her his ally. Aaliyah orders him to stand up and asks if he is serious about what he said. Urian confirms his seriousness and swears to it, so Aaliyah angrily demands that he swear a real oath. As Aaliyah pressures him with her suffocating aura, Urian thinks that this scene seems familiar. Aaliyah threatened him that his life from now on would not be the same, and if he broke his oath, she would not hesitate to eliminate him herself. He remembers that this is the same dialogue Aaliyah said to the original novel's protagonist, not to Urian. Under the intense pressure, Urian decides to use his internal technique, 10,000 Divine Poison's energy, to easily resist Aaliyah's aura. Aaliyah is greatly surprised when she feels her aura has been repelled, and wonders how that could happen. Urian finds the opportunity perfect to swear that he will not go back to his old ways. After she calms down, Aaliyah shyly tells him that she will be watching him, and warns him that if he makes another mistake, the engagement will be broken off unconditionally. Then she leaves. Urian was surprised when he realized Aaliyah didn't intend to break off the engagement. After she leaves, she meets the Marquis, who asks her if she has made her decision about the engagement. She tells him she has decided not to break it off. The Marquis was surprised by the response. When the Marquis asks her for the reason, Aaliyah admits she doesn't fully understand it herself. She explains that she heard a rumor about his change and wanted to see for herself, wondering if he had returned to the kind and weak personality he had in his childhood. But she found him to be a completely different person, which is why she decided to trust him this time. The Marquis asked if she was sure of what she was saying, and she replied in the affirmative. She adds that if he goes back to being a scoundrel again, she will beat him to death with her own hands. The Marquis laughs happily, admiring her strong personality, and asks her to take good care of Urian. Aaliyah refuses the Marquis's offer to stay for a few days, explaining that she told her father she was coming to break off the engagement, so the situation would be awkward. The Marquis asks her to see Urian before she leaves, but she refuses again, saying he is training and she doesn't want to disturb him. Later, the Marquis summons Urian. He initially jokes with him, pretending not to know him. Urian grew anxious, fearing his father had discovered the truth. Then he laughs and tells him he is proud of the great effort he has put in. The Marquis asks him if he knows why he was summoned, and Urian replies that he believes it's time to begin his training as a knight. The Marquis is surprised by his son's intelligence, and tells him it's time to learn the swordsmanship arts of the Rox family. But Urian tells him he has something else he'd like to discuss. The Marquis is shocked when Urian tells him he wants to learn throwing arts instead of swordsmanship. Urian firmly confirmed his decision. The Marquis strongly refuses, describing throwing arts as a cheap trick used by thieves. He adds that a primitive skill like dagger throwing couldn't even penetrate a knight's armor, let alone the scales of a low-level monster like a burak. At that point, Urian proposes a bet, whether or not he can hunt a burak using a dagger. The Marquis calls his son's stubbornness useless, asserting that a warrior's blade needs an aura to destroy a burak's scales, and that even if he trained in throwing arts for 100 years, he would never be able to penetrate them. Urian insists on the bet, pointing out that the Marquis would surely win in that case, so he should accept the bet. The Marquis finally agrees, seeing it as an opportunity to break his son's stubbornness. They agree on the terms of the bet. If Urian succeeds in hunting the burak, he will train him himself from now on, but if he fails, he will follow the Marquis's will. Urian is delighted and decides to prepare for the practical test the next day. Urian wondered to himself how many attempts he would need to penetrate the burak's scales. He plans to eat some hidden poisonous herbs that night to raise the level of his 10,000 Divine Poison's energy to the 3rd star. Aaron later comes to him with a message from the Marquis, setting the time for the test at 12 o'clock noon in the first training hall. Urian asks her if she knows the details of the bet, and she tells him the entire palace knows, and that everyone is laughing, and talking about how Urian will wet his pants in fear or run away upon seeing the burak. She tells him he is still the public enemy in everyone's eyes. He asks her if these people will come to watch, and she confirms that the hall will be packed because the Marquis did not forbid attendance. Urian got flustered, muttering to himself that what he was seeing had already turned into a spectacular scene. Urian asks for her opinion, and she replies that she believes tomorrow will be his day. That night, Urian reaches the 3rd star in his technique. On the day of the bet, the training hall was packed with crowds. The Marquis asks Urian if he is ready. Urian notices the large number of attendees, and the Marquis claims he only told his personal mage, and that the news somehow spread. He warns him not to embarrass himself in front of everyone. After that, an elder begins the summoning ritual. Urian watches, fascinated, as this is the first time he has seen magic in person. Suddenly, a huge monster tore through the place, kicking up a thick cloud of dust interspersed with an aura saturated with electrical charges. What is even more surprising to him is that he will see the monster he himself created as an author with his own eyes. The Buraq monster appears, an oceanic monster standing 150 centimeters tall. The crowd panics at its grotesque appearance, but Villian looks at it with curiosity. He remembers creating this monster in a hurry while eating sashimi at a restaurant when he was short on ideas. He even thinks that if it weren't for its arms and legs, it might have looked a little cute. Suddenly, the Buraq attacks, and the crowd screams, but the Marquis prevents the knights from intervening. Villian grumbled that the monster had ambushed him without any prior warning. Villian notices that the monster isn't very fast, and decides to test the hardness of its scales first. When he focuses, a new crosshair appears before him, indicating the monster's weak point. He decides to try aiming for it. He throws his dagger with extreme precision towards the weak point. The monster was hit by the dagger and jumped from the intensity of the pain. The monster dies instantly. Villian is surprised that he finished it off with just one hit. A stunned silence falls over the hall. Then the crowd erupts in cheers, declaring that the young master has successfully hunted the Buraq and that what he did was absolutely amazing. Villian stands victorious as everyone calls out his name. In a state of disbelief, the Marquis asks Villian how he did that. Villian simply replies that he aimed well and hit the target. The Marquis refuses to accept the result, considering it illogical for a Buraq to die from a single dagger. Villian takes advantage of the crowd's presence and hints loudly that the great Marquis would surely not go back on his word. The Knight Commander tries to save the situation, pointing out that Villian's dagger landed precisely under the Buraq's arm where there were no scales, and that what happened was just luck. The Marquis insists on redoing the bet, but Villian refuses. The Marquis then offers to add a new promise to the bet. If Villian wins again, he will grant him one wish, whatever it may be. But if Villian loses, he must learn swordsmanship as originally planned. The Marquis adds that the opponent this time will not be a Buraq, but a knight. He asks Villian if he will accept the bet, and Villian agrees. Villian sees this as an opportunity, especially when he notices that Knight Commander Karox is in the audience, and thinks it might be a chance to break Karox's pride. But he backs down from this idea, realizing it might be better to leave him be for now to ensure he continues to receive his supply of poisons through Pero. Villian tells the Marquis that he understands facing an official knight would be too difficult for him, and suggests instead that he face a trainee knight to make the duel fair. Villian is surprised when he realizes it has come to the point of him facing a trainee knight. He then asks the Marquis to allow him to choose the knight himself. When the Marquis asks for his choice, Villian announces that he will choose Cride. Cride is summoned, and he steps forward respectfully. The Marquis gives him a mission. Cride, with all courage, accepts any mission the Marquis gives him. The Marquis told him the mission is to face that boy and fix his bad habits. Cride is shocked by this order. The Marquis noticed Cride's concern and asked if he could complete the mission, but he agrees to carry it out after the Marquis insists. Villian reassures Cride and tells him not to worry too much. As Villian and Cride prepare for the duel, Villian announces that he will only throw 3 daggers, and if Cride can block all of them, he will consider himself the loser. This announcement angers the Marquis, who sees it as arrogance and urges Cride to teach him a lesson. The audience shares the Marquis's excitement, cheering for Cride and threatening him with no food or punishment if he loses. Amidst the uproar, Villian hears a woman's voice wishing him good luck, which pleases him. When the duel begins, Villian prepares to throw the first dagger. He uses Creator's Eye to examine his opponent but is surprised to see numerous targeting marks on Cride's body, unlike the Buraq monster which only had one. He realizes that targeting any of these points would result in killing Cride, which he does not want. Therefore, he decides to aim directly at Cride's sword. Villian throws the first dagger with immense force, and when it collides with Cride's sword, Cride is pushed back several steps, and a booming sound like a cannon is heard. The Marquis is shocked and remained standing in his place, stunned by the tremendous power that came from an ordinary dagger. Cride trembled from the shock of the dagger that hit his sword, even making a crack in it. Villian tells Cride that this strike was just a warning not to be complacent in his defense. He then prepares for the second throw, announcing that this time he will throw with his full power. Villian is confident that Cride, as a main character, will not die from this blow. Villian uses the straight strike skill and throws the second dagger. Cride realized the dagger's power was immense, and despite his attempt to block it, Cride's sword breaks on impact. Amidst the astonishment of the spectators and the Marquis, he is thrown to the ground on his knees, ending the duel by dropping his sword amidst the Marquis's bewilderment. After Cride's defeat, the Marquis asks to speak with Villian in private, but Cride intervenes, objecting that the bet is not over yet, and there is still one dagger left. The Marquis tries to end the duel, but Villian decides to ask Cride directly. Villian asks Cride to raise his head, and asks if he will accept this inconclusive result. Cried found no way to respond, as he felt unable to face Urien, reminding him that what makes a knight is reaching a final result, whether victory or defeat, by asking him if he would give up like this. Cried regains his resolve and asks for a new sword, declaring that he will not withdraw in this manner. Suddenly, Cried awakens his aura, to the astonishment of those present. Urien realizes this is perfectly in line with the story he wrote, where Cried's berserker trait manifests when he reaches his absolute limit. Urien sees this as an opportunity to test his advanced techniques, as Cried prepares with his blazing aura, which is equivalent to the talent of a seasoned knight. The Marquis felt worried about Urien, unsure of how he would act, while Urien appeared completely confident in himself. He asks Urien to throw the final dagger. Urien, in turn, prepares, and throws the dagger using the curved mountain technique, a technique that makes the dagger spin in an unpredictable path. Cried and the Marquis are surprised by this technique. Cried felt angry because he thought Urien was joking with him. Cried swung his sword with all his might towards the dagger, but the dagger changed direction in the air and avoided his sword strike. Cried was surprised that the dagger had embedded itself in his shoulder, causing him intense pain, for which he kept screaming. The audience is confused, believing the throw was slow and that Cried is overreacting. Urien thinks that the pain Cried is feeling must be immense because he used a larger amount of internal energy in this throw. Before the duel can continue, the Marquis intervenes, telling Urien that he has won the bet, and that their talk will happen later. After the duel, Urien approaches Cried, who is still in pain, and places his hand on him, using the internal energy absorption technique to relieve his pain. The pain suddenly disappears, and Cried thanks Urien warmly, and apologizes to him. Cried admits that when he first saw the dagger flying slowly, he thought Urien was mocking him, but he now realizes it was a masterfully divine technique. Cried concludes that it's impossible to learn such a technique in a short time, and therefore Urien had been hiding his skills all this time. Cried continues to develop his theory, wondering if there is a secret organization targeting the Marquis's family, and that Urien had been hiding his power until now as part of a great sacrifice to protect the family. Urien is amazed by Cried's wild imagination and realizes his personality leans towards loving conspiracy theories. Cried offers his services to Urien, pledging to help him fight any secret organizations in the future. At that moment, Urien notices that Cried's affinity level has risen to 26, favorable. Urien didn't try to correct Cried's words, simply bidding him farewell by saying he'd see him later. After Cried leaves, shouting that he will spread the truth that the young master was never a scoundrel, Urien decides it's a good idea to get close to Cried, who will later become an extremely powerful knight. Aaron praised his performance, encouraging Urien that he did well in the battle. Aaron asks Urien about the technique he used at the end of the duel. Urien tells her it's a new technique and asks for her opinion on it. Aaron replies that she ran a virtual duel in her head, and if she had faced this technique for the first time without seeing it, she would have been defeated. But now she is capable of blocking it. Urien realizes this is thanks to the rare and powerful clear mind trait she possesses. Urien reminds her that she received knightly education since she was young, and if she hadn't become his personal maid, she would be a knight now. He asks her if she is satisfied with her current situation, and she is surprised by his question. Later, in the Marquis's office, the Marquis summons Urien to his office. He initially scolds him for calling him "my lord" instead of "father" when they are alone. Urien was surprised by the Marquis's attempt to approach him cordially, but he addressed him in a very normal way as he wanted. Then he seriously asks him about the technique he used in the duel, noting that he searched through books and couldn't find any throwing technique with such a masterful movement. He adds that it's impossible to learn such a skill on his own in just 1 month, no matter how much of a genius he is. When the Marquis demands to know the truth behind Urien's technique, Urien tells him that he cannot tell the whole truth, but he had prepared a story because he anticipated this situation. He tells him that he found a book. Urien explains that he was searching the family's upper library for effective training methods when he stumbled upon a book lying on the floor. This caused another book to fall from the top shelf, and this book was untitled but had strange engravings on it. Without thinking, he opened it, and a light emanated from it, and something was absorbed into his head. After that, the book disappeared. The Marquis concludes with astonishment that this book was a grimoire. Urien thinks to himself that of course he knows what a grimoire is, as he was the one who created this setting in the story, where distinguished mages engrave their techniques into books to pass them down. The Marquis is convinced by the story, commenting that the attic library contains so many books collected by his ancestors that he himself doesn't know everything in it, and that Urien finding this book was a great stroke of luck. Urien agrees, saying that he indeed hit the jackpot. The Marquis tells Urien that he will honor his promise and will not force him to learn swordsmanship again, and based on the additional promise, he asks Urien to tell him his wish. Urien replies that he wants the position of heir. The Marquis is shocked by this request, so Urien asks him sarcastically if he won't grant him his wish. The Marquis replies hesitantly that he will have to grant it because it is within his authority. Urian notices his father's discomfort and tells him that him taking the position of heir will trouble him, as many will oppose it and Lady Cana will cause a huge fuss. Therefore, he declares that he will give up this wish this time. The Marquis feels relieved and thanks him warmly. Urian thinks about the truth, which is that he doesn't care about the position of heir at all, because that would mean spending his days tied down, learning to manage the Marquisate's affairs. A life without freedom. Urian thinks that instead of becoming the heir, he would rather use his time to master the arts of the Tang clan of Sichuan and travel the world in search of opportunities. The Marquis asks him to tell him another wish. Urian tells his father that he plans to create his own knightly order and wishes to appoint Arin and Cried as his knights. The Marquis sees this request as easier than the position of heir and agrees, admitting that Arin's talent is too great for her to remain just a personal maid. Urian thanks his father. When the Marquis asks who will become Urian's new personal servant, as there are currently no available servants, Urian suggests a person named Pero who works in the kitchen. He asks his father to make it seem as if the Marquis chose Pero by chance, not at his own request. His father grew worried and asked him if something had happened, to which Urian replied that he would explain it to him later. The Marquis agrees to his request without asking further questions, showing his growing trust in Urian, which is confirmed by the status window showing the Marquis's affinity level has reached 74, trust. Later, Urian gathers Arin and Cried and announces that they have become members of his personal knightly order, and asks them to train hard as usual. He then introduces them to his new personal servant, Pero. Arin still feels suspicious of Pero. This was because she had previously asked Urian if she could ask him a question. Arin asks Urian why he specifically chose Pero to replace her, and Urian calmly reveals the truth to her, explaining that Pero is a spy. Arin was shocked by his response as she did not expect it. Urian continued that Pero was sent by the Knight Commander Karox and Lady Cana to assassinate him. Arin is shocked and wonders why he is keeping him so close, to which Urian replies with a smile that now he only listens to his own orders. After that, Cried asks to ask a question. Urian doesn't object to questions. Cried points out that although the order consists of only 2 members, there should at least be a vice captain. He explains that this position, according to tradition, should go to the most skilled person, but he sees Arin as looking young and weak, and not strong at all. Urian agrees with Cried's logic, which prompts Cried to request a challenge for the position. After Arin defeats Cried in a duel, Arin advises him that his attack patterns are too simple and can be easily read. Cried admits his defeat. Urian announces that the captain of the knightly order has now been decided, and it is Arin, and everyone applauds her. Afterwards, Pero leaves to prepare dinner, and Urian decides to test a new technique. Urian watches Pero as he walks away and senses his vital energy, Qi. He decides to use secret sound transmission, a technique from wuxia novels that allows transmitting sound directly to the opponent's hearing using internal energy instead of sound. Urian calls out to Pero using this technique, and Pero panics when he hears the voice echoing in his head. Urian told him that he was communicating with her via telepathy. He believes it's a form of black magic. Urian takes advantage of his fear and goes along with this belief, making Pero believe his master is a black magician who controls poisons. Urian was surprised by Pero's analysis and let him think as he wished without correction. Urian asks him if the poison he requested is ready, and Pero tells him that he barely managed to prepare Snake's Mind, a poison extracted from 100 venomous snakes. Urian orders him to add it generously to the charan soup he will be eating. Pero felt nervous and rushed to fulfill his request. That night, Urian meditates and realizes his internal energy is not progressing as fast as he had hoped after reaching the 3rd star, and with the realization that a global crisis is imminent, he decides it's time to leave the Marquisate to seek opportunities to develop his power. Urian tells his father that he plans to go out for a while. The Marquis asks if he intends to go to the Marquis's village, and Urian agrees. Urian asks about the duration he will be away. Hiding his intention to travel far away, he tells him he plans to be away for a week. The Marquis agrees to his request, considering he deserves a break after his hard training, then asks him how to handle the guards. Urian was waiting for this question and replies that he doesn't need a special guard, which surprises the Marquis. The Marquis strongly rejects the idea of Urian traveling without a guard, reminding him that he is the heir of the Rox family. Urian explains that he won't need an escort because he is only going to the neighboring village. The Marquis explains that the world is a terrifying place, warning him of the danger of being poisoned. Urian thinks that poison doesn't affect him, but he realizes that convincing his father will be difficult, so he reluctantly agrees to take a guard. Urian tells him that he will leave in 2 days, and the Marquis agrees to prepare the guards for him. In his room, Urian decides to sneak out the next day instead of waiting for the guard. He summons Pero and tells him he is going on a trip and needs money. Urian reminds him of the money Karox gave him to feed the snakes. Urian asks him if he will refuse his request. Pero agrees to lend him the money immediately. Urian also asks him about that thing, pointing out that he saw the partial space bag that Pero owns when he took out the poisonous herbs. It is a magical bag that can store a large amount of luggage. Pero agrees to lend him the bag as well. After Urian gets what he wants, he gives Pero a fake antidote sufficient for a month, which is actually just dried leaves. Urian tells Pero that he appreciates his efforts so far, and that he will rely on him from this moment on. He promises him that he will give him a full cure soon. At dawn the next day, Urian leaves a note and sneaks out of the palace. As he walks through the empty garden, he did not encounter anyone in the garden as expected. Then an old gardener greets him. Urian returned his greeting. Urian feels a strong aura emanating from the gardener, but he decides to ignore it for now. Urian leaves the Marquisate's territory for the first time in his life and heads towards the magic tower in the neighboring village. Upon arrival, he tells the receptionist that he wishes to use teleportation, warp. The employee asked him if he had used it before, and he answered no. When the magic tower employee asks him for his destination, Urian tells him he wants to go to Os Castle. The employee notes that the destination is far and informs him that the cost is 50 gold pieces. Urian pays the amount, which he considers exorbitant, and registers a fake name, Polion, the name he used in online games. The employee leads him to the teleportation room and tells him he will arrive when he hears a knocking sound. Urian enters the room, and after a few moments, he hears a voice telling him he has arrived. He exits to find himself in another magic tower, where an employee at Os Castle welcomes him. Urian is surprised that he felt nothing during the teleportation, and the employee proudly tells him that this comfortable sensation during teleportation is the pride of their magic tower. Urian was surprised that it was this easy. Urian wondered to himself why he felt a twisting sensation instead of the usual comfort. Then the employee addressed him, welcoming him and wishing him a pleasant journey. Urian goes out to explore Os Castle, and notices that it is located in the western region, unlike the Marquisate, and that the architecture is different, and the city is crowded with people. He begins to search for the unicorn workshop in the blacksmith's alley. After a long search until dark, he is unable to find it. He decides to check the last remaining alley. There, he finds a blacksmith working. The blacksmith asked G if he was a customer. Urian told him he wanted to inquire about one of the blacksmiths here, and asks him if he knows a workshop called the Unicorn Workshop. The blacksmith replies that as far as he knows, there is no workshop with that name nearby. Urian is disappointed, but the blacksmith then adds that this is the name he was planning to use for his shop soon. Urian realizes he has found the right person. He uses Creator's Eye to examine the blacksmith, and a status window appears, revealing his name is Geranox, and he possesses the traits War Gear Crafting and Fire Affinity, in addition to other skills. Urian asks Geranox if he can take a look at the weapons he sells, and the blacksmith agrees and welcomes him inside. When Urian enters the blacksmith's workshop, he asks Geranox about his business. Geranox admits that business is not good. His shop is located in a secluded corner and his skills are not the best. He adds that customers who come take a look and then leave, and he doesn't know how much longer he can go on like this. Urian takes a look at the displayed weapons and realizes they are not ordinary at all. Using Creator's Eye, he sees information about the swords. The 3 Wind Spirit swords are blessed by the Wind Spirit Sylph and increase attack speed, movement, and agility. There is also the Great Flame Spirit Sword, blessed by the Fire Spirit Salamander, which increases strength, stamina, and durability. Urian asks Geranox if he made them. Geranox confirms it, but describes them as failures. He explains that the swords became strangely heavy after being made, to the point that even strong people can barely lift them, which is why no one buys them. Urian thinks to himself that this is not a failure, but that the swords have not yet found a worthy person who can bring out their true power. Urian decides to buy the swords, believing they would be perfect for Aaron and Cried, but he realizes these are not the treasures he is truly looking for. He asks Geranox if he has any severely rusted weapons. Geranox is surprised by the request, but shows him a pile of scrap he was planning to sell as firewood. Urian examines the weapons, thinking that things are going exactly as he planned in his story, and finds what he's looking for. Geranox tells him he did not make this weapon, but found it in the storage and was planning to get rid of it. Urian decides to take this weapon as well. Geranox offers him everything for just 2 gold pieces. Urian thinks this is a bargain, as the real value of this weapon exceeds 200 gold pieces. Urian changes his plan. Urian realizes that what truly interests him is not the weapons, but the blacksmith himself. He offers Geranox, who is suffering from financial difficulties, to close his workshop and work for him as his private blacksmith. Geranox is surprised by the sudden offer. The blacksmith told Urian that he had not been ignoring the possibility of closing, but he did not expect this to happen. To convince him, Urian introduces himself formally. "I am Urian Rox of the Rox family, the invincible spear, protector of the South." Geranox is shocked when he realizes he is speaking to a member of the Marquis Rox's family. After Urian reveals his identity, Geranox kneels before him, asking for forgiveness because he never imagined someone of his stature would visit his humble workshop. Urian is surprised by his reaction and asks him to rise, but Geranox insists on staying that way and asking what he wants, so Urian reluctantly agrees. Geranox asks why someone like Urian would want to hire a poor blacksmith like him, and Urian replies that it is because of his special talent. Geranox denies having any talent, saying he gets scolded by his master every day. Urian realized his training wasn't just strict, it was the epitome of strictness. Urian explains that he visited many blacksmith workshops today, but Geranox's weapons stood out from the rest, because of the clear sincerity in their making. He praises the precision of his work, especially in wrapping the sword hilts, which is important to prevent the weapon from slipping. Urian tells him that he believes he will awaken a special talent one day. Urian wondered to himself, "I just made that up on the spot. Will it work?" Geranox is moved by his words and agrees to follow him, but he notes that Urian is completely different from the rumors he heard about him being a delinquent. Urian decides to show him something interesting. He takes the rusty dagger he bought and utters the word, "Awaken." The dagger transforms into a glowing legendary weapon called Agnes, the vestige of many forms. Geranox is surprised, while Urian thinks that this weapon, the legendary Ego Sword, was supposed to be obtained by the original protagonist of the novel. A system window appears asking Urian if he wants to proceed and make a spiritual contract with Agnes, and he agrees. After a flash of light, Urian hears an angry voice in his head wondering who he is and how he dares to make a contract with it. Urian is surprised that the voice is not that of a cute girl as he wrote in his story, but a rude one. Agnes scolds him, telling him he doesn't have an ounce of talent, and Urian realizes she is angry because she cannot sense any mana from him. Agnes wondered why someone like him would ever be able to make a contract with her. Agnes asks him how he knew of her location and the incantation needed to release her. Urian replies that he heard it from the Great Prophet, an additional setting he had put in the story to ensure consistency. Agnes continues to insult him, wondering why the Great Prophet would waste his time on a useless person like him. Urian asks if she knows what he can do, then answers himself with confidence that of course he knows, as he is the one who wrote her settings. He explains that Agnes can split into two separate weapons, and each can transform into any weapon its wielder imagines. In the original story, the protagonist used it as a sword and a shield. Urian tells Agnes that he knows if her sub-body is lost, it always returns to her main body. Agnes insists that his knowledge is worthless, because she can only be used with mana, which Urian lacks. She told him to give up, but Urian tells her she is annoying, and uses his internal energy to force her to transform into a ring, causing her intense pain. Agnes screams in surprise, feeling the warmth of Urian's energy as if she were melting. Urian realizes that martial arts can substitute for mana to activate Agnes's abilities. After that, Urian finalizes his arrangements with Geranox, telling him he will need 2 days to finish his affairs. They agree to meet in front of the As Castle Central Park in 2 days at noon. As Urian wanders through the park, he is surprised to see Aaliyah there. Elena was surprised and asked him what he was doing here. Urian felt that the situation in front of Central Park seemed familiar. He remembers that this is where the original protagonist was supposed to meet Elia for the first time, and he realizes that the main story's path has changed somehow. Elia angrily asks him what he is doing here. Urian replies that he came to look for a blacksmith. Elia is surprised by this, pointing out that the Rox family has plenty of blacksmiths. Urian explains that he wanted to hire his own person. Elia tells him that if he had told her beforehand, she could have helped him, but he reassures her that he has already found a good person. At that moment, Geranox arrives on time. The blacksmith apologized to Urian for being late and making him wait. Urian introduces Elia to Geranox, identifying her as his fiancée. Another knight interrupts them, asking his squad leader, Elia, who she is talking to, noting that they will be leaving soon. Elia introduces Urian to the knight, named Mask, as her fiancé, Urian Rox. Rox is shocked when he sees Urian for the first time. Mask is surprised to see a young master from the Rox family in a place like this, and introduces himself as Mask Malone, leader of the 5th squad of the Steelhammer Knights, who serve the Marquis family. Urian thinks to himself that he knows Mask well, as he is a minor character with a bad attitude that he wrote in his novel. Urian remembers how the events were supposed to unfold in the original story. A masked person intercepts Mask and his knights. Then the protagonist steps forward and challenges Mask. As Urian anxiously recalls the events of the original story, where a fight was supposed to break out between the protagonist and Mask, and Aaliyah would arrive just in time to stop them, from which their relationship would begin. More importantly, after this incident, the protagonist accompanies Elia into battle and saves her from certain death. Urian realizes he can't simply find the protagonist and bring him back into the scene, and he decides he cannot let Elia die. Urian asks Elia for her destination. She tells him that reports of goblin raids near Azio Castle have increased, and her knightly order has received an order to scout the area and subdue them. Urian asks Elia for a favor, which is to allow him to join them. Elia is surprised by his request and asks him why. Urian replies that as someone who is also training, he wants to experience real combat and see her skills up close. Elia warns him that it could be dangerous, but he reassures her that he is good at running away. Elia agrees to his request and orders Sir Mask to provide a horse for him and Gerenox. Mask objects, saying they are not on a picnic and cannot be careless, especially since Urian and Gerenox have no trace of mana. Mask adds that they have neither the duty nor the ability to protect them. Elia sternly orders him to follow orders without another word. Mask complies, and Elia whispers to him that he should have become the squad leader if he felt it was unfair. Before they set off, Elia asks Urian to stay close to her because he is in danger, and Urian orders Gerenox to hold on to him tightly. They ride off together. Upon their arrival, Elia divides the knights into teams of 5 to search for the goblin settlement, ordering them not to attack and to fire a signal flare upon finding it. Then Elia ordered the guards to disperse. As darkness approaches and tracking becomes difficult, Elia decides to turn back. Suddenly, a signal flare lights up the sky, followed by another flare from a different direction, then a third, and a fourth. The knights wonder how many flares went off, with Urian answering 4, while another insists it was 5. Elia decides to head towards the nearest flare to the west, but one of the knights tries to stop them. When Elia's squad arrives at the location of one of the flares, they find that all the soldiers are dead. The knights are shocked to see their comrades' armor has melted, wondering what kind of attack they faced. Elia decides to head immediately to the next southern flare location. There too, they find all the soldiers killed in the same horrific manner, as one of the knights urges his captain to move quickly to the next area. Urian intervenes, shouting that they cannot move now. Elia is surprised by Urian's words. Urian explains that the goblins are spread out and hunting their soldiers one by one, and at this rate, there is no chance of victory. He suggests that they should halt the operation and fire a signal flare to gather all remaining forces at their location. A knight shouts at him angrily, asking who he thinks he is to speak in such a manner, and blames him for this mess. Urian remembers this scene happened in his original story, where the protagonist was reprimanded in the same way, which angered the readers. As the knight continues to scold him and orders him to be silent, Urian uses his internal energy to pressure him, causing the knight to fall from his horse. Elia doesn't understand how Urian was able to make the knight fall without getting near him. Urian orders him to know his place and remain silent, and the terrified knight agrees. Urian just asks him to watch as he solves this problem. Then Urian turns to Elia, reminding her that in the original story, she didn't listen to the protagonist and stubbornly stuck to her opinion. He asks her to judge wisely this time. Elia is convinced by his point of view, admitting she wasn't seeing the situation clearly, and orders a blue flare to be fired immediately to gather the forces. The knights fire the flares and wait for the remaining scattered knights to gather. Gerenox admires Urian's ability to make everyone move as he wishes, and asks him if he is sure that a larger number of soldiers will gather again. But Urian tells him that most of the soldiers probably won't be able to reach them. Gerenox gets nervous when he understands what he means by his words. Urian explains that an enemy named Karuda has already finished them off. The real fight begins. One of the soldiers runs to Elia in a state of terror. The terrified soldier screams that they must flee immediately, and Elia asks him in astonishment what is happening. At that moment, a massive army of goblins appears, and another knight shouts that their numbers are overwhelming. Elia stands speechless as she sees this crushing number of enemies. She feels guilty and apologizes to Urian, believing he will die because of her. But Urian reassures her that it's okay, and steps forward confidently, assuring her that she will not die here. Elia asks him with bewilderment what he is doing. Urian faces the goblin horde and calls out to Agnes, announcing that he will test what they have practiced over the past 2 days. He orders her to generate black iron bullets by proxy. Urian thinks that he hasn't had a chance to try this technique, which he obtained after reaching the 3rd level of the Body of 10,000 Poisons. Before, a system window appears before him, explaining that the black iron blast technique fires hidden weapons filled with internal power by detonating the black iron bullets. Urian shouts, ordering the goblins to receive his attack, and throws the bullet, which hits its target. After the bullet lodged in one of the goblins' weapons, amidst their confusion, the first explosion occurred, which wiped out a large number of them amidst their screams, leading Urian to order the bullets to return. He thinks to himself happily how Agnes's proxy summoning ability is a perfect match for his power. As soon as the bullets return, he throws them again, creating consecutive explosions that wipe out more goblins. A shocked Elia asks him what he just threw, and Urian calmly replies that the technique is called Black Iron Blast, and that he will explain the details later. Elia notices that the number of goblins has significantly decreased, so she turns to her astonished knights and shouts at them, asking what they are doing, assuring them that victory is now possible. She urges them to seize the opportunity and eliminate the remaining goblins. Under her leadership, the knights charge to engage the remaining enemies. During the battle, and the clash between the knights and goblins, one of the goblins tries to flee the battle but is surprised by something standing in its way, and it screams in pain as a red hand appears, grabbing its head. Aaliyah is stunned as she wonders what is happening. Suddenly, a massive red-skinned warrior of incredible size appears from among the goblins, holding the corpse of a goblin in his hand. Urian watches this newcomer, realizing that the legendary goblin warrior Karuta has finally appeared. Urian looks at him with determination, thinking that if they can't eliminate him today, they will all die.